He put out a tweet, and I find this fascinating. I mean, keep in mind, part of our conversation in the previous hour, you know, the Republican Party has become an authoritarian cult. I was talking with Dean Obeidallah last night on his program, and he made this point, you know, that the Republican Party is no longer a traditional political party. And I pointed out there have been a couple of studies now that show that actually the GOP is more like Fidesz, which is Viktor Orban's party in Hungary, which is not a party. It's a neo-fascist movement. It's more like the Nazis in Germany in the 30s than it is like the Republicans of 1975, even the Richard Nixon Republicans. Certainly the Jerry Ford Republicans. They're gone. They're just gone. They have left the party. They have left the room. And so we're seeing this increasing trend now in Republican circles of embracing fascists and so-called strongmen and that kind of style of government as a way to govern a country. And so you've got CPAC going to Hungary. Again, Viktor Orban is running a country where there is no free media, independent media, or what independent media there is so marginalized it's pretty much non-existent. Your right to vote is irrelevant because he has gerrymandered the country to the point where he's going to win every election going forward. His cronies own every major industry. It's now a full-blown oligarchy at the very least, just like, you know, Putin's Russia. And the Conservative Political Action Conference is embracing this. The Republican Party is embracing this. Tucker Carlson did his show for a week from Hungary. Viktor Orban in Hungary is the one European country who has refused to condemn Russia for you know, slaughtering people in Ukraine. So Ruben Gallego posts this tweet that you would think on its surface, you know, when you first read it, would produce an outraged blowback from Republicans saying, "What? Are you kidding? No way." He tweeted, and I quote, "If the Republicans take over the House in 2022, U.S. support to Ukraine will come to a halt because they will not be able to stop Representatives Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene from dictating our Ukraine policy." Now, you know, most Americans are very supportive of Ukraine and have gotten the message, got the email, got the, you know, heard the voicemail, got the letter that Russia has ceased to be a functioning, legitimate member of an international community that holds any kind of values beyond violence. And in fact, I want to get into that in a little bit more detail in just a moment. But this is, you know, you would think that Republicans would say, "How dare you say that we prefer Russia over Ukraine?" You would think. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, over the 4th of July, said, "The U.S. is a bully and responsible for killing Ukrainian citizens, and Putin's Russia could have been an ally of the U.S." Not exactly those words, but close to it. But after Ruben Gallego tweets this, then Matt Gaetz tweets back at him, again, Republican from Florida, member of the House of Representatives, the one who's been investigated for paying for sex with an underage girl, for trafficking underage girls. He replies saying, "Ruben is correct." What? If Republicans take over the House of Representatives, they are going to pull all of our support for Ukraine? We're going to go full in with Putin? Because Donald Trump wanted to build a Trump Tower there and make $1 billion? Is that why? I mean, you know, I'm assuming most people would think kind of on the surface that must be what it's about. But no, that's not really what it's about. What it's about is choosing the form of government under which you want to live. And most of us would like to live in a democratic form of government, small d, not the party, the policy. A Republican form of government, to quote the founders of this republic. We would like to live in a country where the majority of, the will of the majority, unless it steps on the rights of a minority, is the law, and the law is enforced, and that we become a nation of laws, not of men, to quote John Adams. But there is a faction within the United States that does not like that. These are, I call them Christo-fascists. Speaking as a Christian myself, I think I can clearly identify this. These people do not take seriously the teachings of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount or in Matthew 25. Instead, they think that it's a club, and they're members of the club. And if you're not a member of the club, you're on the outside, and you deserve to be a victim of them. And they want a country where they run the country, they being white Christians, and not just Christians, a certain sect of Christians. They generally refer to themselves as white evangelicals. And that's what Putin has been selling. Putin has been promoting Christianity in Russia and trash talking the rights of people who are not Christians or who are not straight, gender-wise, all that sort of thing. I think this is nuts. And then to add to this, when Matt Gaetz says, yes, you're right, we are going to stop aid to Russia if we take the House of Representatives. Now we've got this report that Russia is intentionally targeting in Ukraine, in their shellings and their bombings. Remember when they bombed that maternity hospital? This is like a month or so ago. It turns out this is part of an intentional terror campaign that they have been doing all over the country of Ukraine. They have been targeting arms depots, which makes sense, and hospitals. Now, why would they target hospitals? You already have about 6 million people who have fled Ukraine, but you've got another 8 million people who are internally displaced. They've got no place to go. They're still in the country, but their cities have been destroyed, their homes have been destroyed, all these kinds of things. Without their access to health care, you create chaos. And if the Russians can create chaos in Ukraine, then it's a lot easier to take over Ukraine. Annie Sparrow wrote a great piece about this in the Financial Times this morning. She notes the number of Ukrainians who fled the country are 93,000, according to the United Nations. But then she says attacks on health care flout the most fundamental prohibitions of the international humanitarian law, IHL. By concurrently attacking both civilians and targeting hospitals, Russian forces simultaneously create an urgent medical need while denying people access to care to deal with that urgent need, which magnifies the harm caused by mass casualties, especially harmful to girls and women, leaving them vulnerable to unable to access emergency management of rape, which the Russians are also using now as a weapon of war. She writes, the deliberate targeting of hospitals is a primary driver of displacement. Displacement is a primary objective rather than a sad or unfortunate outcome. This is actually what the Russian military is trying to do. The Kremlin, she notes, has used this strategy in Chechnya, Syria, and now they are doing it in Ukraine. In Chechnya and Syria, they went after the hospitals first. They're doing this in Ukraine too. She goes on to note, depopulated regions are easier for an invading army to control. 5 million refugees from Ukraine are 5 million fewer people present to hold the country together. 8 million internally displaced people fighting for survival don't have the time to struggle for democracy. Forced dispersion facilitates political dominance. She says attacks on healthcare are a high-yield war crime. And, wraps up the article, this piece in the Financial Times today, saying that the prosecutors need to be looking into this in a really serious way, and the rest of the developed world needs to be calling it out. And we need to be calling it out now. I mean, this is just so wrong. This is a war crime.